Hello, this is Heather from Blog She Wrote, and today I'm going to share with you some items from our geography quest from this week. So last week, if you were following along with our treasure hunt, I'm going to give you the answers, and any of these answers are going to be also written. So if you watch the video now and you want to do the activities later, you're going to be able to do that because they'll be written below in the blog post as well. So we started out in the Vatican City last time, and if you followed along, you went to Mongolia, then Italy, France, Portugal, and finally, you should have ended up in the country of focus, which is Brazil. Brazil is found, of course, in South America, and I wanted to think of a way that we could do some activities regarding Brazil. First thing I did was I printed out two maps using Wonder Maps. The reason I used Wonder Maps over a plain outline map is that I can use overlays and change how I want the map to be. So we used the software to make a physical map of Brazil, which shows basically the topography of the continent and the country. It shows the climate of the region. So you're able to see the physical features of the country of Brazil. The next map that I printed was a map, a black and white map this time, and it has on it just a few features, not all of them. So I chose the country outlines, the country names, the rivers, and the river names. And that was it. All of the rest of the overlays or features that I could have added to the map, I left off. Because this week I thought it would be fun to focus on the watershed of the Amazon River. So what I did was I outlined the country in color with a marker, and I drew in all of the lines for the Amazon River and its main tributaries. So it gives you a really good idea of the area of the watershed of the Amazon River Basin. Now, if your kids don't know what a watershed is, this is a great time to introduce them to the concept that water flows into other bodies of water. So you might start out with a small creek and end up in a larger stream, on down to larger rivers, which eventually dump into either a lake, a large lake, or which could keep flowing, and eventually everything ends up in the ocean. So great time to talk about watershed and what that means, and that's what we're going to be focusing on, and that's why I chose the title for my map, Amazon River Watershed. A map should always be titled because you can create a map that has different features on it that you want to outline if you're making a map, or one thing that I love about this map is that I get to title it myself. No matter what map I choose, it isn't titled for me, so I like that feature. So you can have your kids trace the same things, and then what I did was I went on to Google Earth, and I'm going to suggest that you do the same, and you can focus right in on the Amazon. And what happens when you go there are little icons all along the river's edge, and you can click there. And people have uploaded pictures from around the world that people from around the world that have visited the region can upload pictures, and then they show you a picture of what you could see if you went there. One of the things that struck me is how wide the river is. Even further west, it's still an enormous river, and it was neat to see just the vegetation that was around there. We know that it's rainforest. I've never been to one, so it was neat to see. One other thing that you can look at is, where does the Amazon River begin? Does it begin in Brazil, or are the headwaters of the Amazon in another country? One of the things that is important to discuss when you're talking about watershed and the health of a watershed is that very often you have to have more than one political entity that is cooperating together for the health of that river or lake or bay, because there can be more than one place that's in charge of the watershed that empties into that body of water. So these are all things that you can discuss with your kids as you talk about watershed. Where does the Amazon River end? And what does the end of a river look like? You can talk about river deltas and what it's like there. You can talk about what the total land area of Brazil is compared to where the watershed is. The people in some of the populated cities probably have less influence on the watershed of the Amazon than they do on rivers down here that empty into the Atlantic Ocean. And so looking at also the area of the watershed compared to the total area of the country. Looking at the physical map, we can see where there's probably rainforest, and then there are other places that are a little more arid and dry within the country. There's a lot of consternation and debate over what to do with the land around the Amazon because it is fertile and it can grow a lot of food, but it's also rainforest and it needs to be protected, and so there is controversy over that. But we can see here, right through there in the equator, how much more fertile the land is than probably in other more arid places down near the southern part of the country. When you do this, you can also use an atlas to explore other features. I like the National Geographic World Atlas for Young Explorers because it is just a really clean map and it has symbols on it. For example, I would not have known, if you look at some of the symbols here, that rice is grown along the Amazon River. Kind of makes sense because it's a really moist area, but it's not something that I had really thought of when it comes to agriculture, economy, and things like that, which you can always find in an atlas. Really, the quest is yours. If there are other features that you want your kids to discover about Brazil, please feel free to add those things. Capital cities, where the most populous cities are, where the people live in Brazil, and some things about their lifestyle. I wanted to focus today on the watershed and introducing that because I had the ability to focus on that with my map, which is a really cool feature. So thank you for joining us here at Blog She Wrote today. Next week there will be a new challenge for you, a new quest, and thank you for joining along with us in this quest.